I've never heard about this Cult of Done.
You take moving from the place of not knowing into action.
Because I wasn't aware of all the steps involved until I actually just started. It's BS. You can't edit your own work.
Right? It's better to do a little bit on something every day than try and get the whole thing done in a single day.
It's actually better to do it at 50% capacity every single day than to do it once a week intensely. That's what I think.
I'm sure somebody's going to go, Bevan.
Oh, just wait. Once it starts, it's all going to be flying in.
Okay, welcome to our Code and Character podcast. It's Ivan and Bevan here again, and today we're going to be discussing the Done Manifesto, which is the manifesto for the Cult of Done, which is a document written by a fellow called Bre Pettis, who's part of the Makerspace. The Makerspace is a community of people that make things. I don't know much about it. Neither of us know a hell of a lot about this thing. I came across it on a YouTube video called How to Get Started, the Cult of Done, by a channel called No Boilerplate, all of possibly only a month ago. And it struck me, and given that we're developing this podcast, well, I wasn't at the time, I think, working on developing a course of mine, changing the way I do things at the moment, and was working through that. I found it quite appropriate for that. And even reading this, I think it's partly what led to me reaching out to Ivan and starting this podcast. So it's a number of different principles about getting things done. And I've spoken to Ivan about it a few times, and we've discussed it and thought we'd go through those principles today on this podcast and speak to them and see what we can learn from that, what we think about it, pull it apart. We can both learn about it together. I know a bit about it. Ivan's brand new to that, so I think we can really dig into it and get a view from a couple of different perspectives, and you can come along for the journey with us. And so
Absolutely.
We'll get into it. I believe you've got a copy of there's a Medium article, a Medium blog post.
Yes.
By Bre Pettis himself.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes.
Is that correct? You've got that up there. So
I'm looking at that now, and you actually brought this up a few times in our discussions about doing this podcast and things like that. And I've never heard about this Cult of Done. And it wasn't until you mentioned it and I looked into it, and straight away, a bunch of the points, I was like, oh yeah, I totally relate to it. So yeah, I'm pretty pumped to just go through each point, and yeah, let's jump through. But you're the expert in this one. You know more about it than me by about a month. I don't know, like.
Hey, that reminds me of a place I used to work years ago. Yeah. Do you know how to spell PHP? Yeah. Okay. You're the PHP expert.
Exactly. It's kind of like putting your hand up at work, where all of a sudden, if you help somebody, they always come to you because you just know it by a few weeks, man. And, I've heard about thought leadership. Thought leadership is just knowing a bit more than your audience. It's all what it is.
Anyway. Oh, wow. Great. I'm leading everything.
That's it. You're a thought leader.
And
yeah.
Okay. So the first point that it speaks to is there are three states of being: not knowing, action, and completion. Which already it catches me, because that idea of not knowing something is a concept that I've a concept I've come to in I follow a thing called the Natural Success Curriculum. A fellow called William Whitecloud teaches that, and I have a coach who leads me through that. And this concept of not knowing something, he talks about a lot, like being comfortable with stepping into the unknown. Being able to especially connect to your intuition by just getting to this place of being okay with the fact that you don't necessarily know. It's like about letting go of control and being open to just seeing what happens, in a sense. And it can really open you up to making, to getting your own assumptions and things out of the way, because you can start seeing things again with fresh eyes by stepping into the unknown in that sense. So I really get caught on this, catches my eye straight away, because when it goes, there's three states of being: not knowing, action, and completion. It sparks that ideas in me. And so when I was following the video, that How to Get Started video, he speaks to this about being a cyclical and continuous process. Because there's a state of not knowing, which is the initial stage where you're unaware and you lack knowledge about something. It could be a problem, a task, or a skill, or any situation. And it's characterized by ignorance, uncertainty, and curiosity. You've just got an idea and that's about it, and you don't know what to do next. And the idea is that you take moving from the place of not knowing into action, where you start to learn and explore and do some work, and you take some steps, and then the idea of knowing starts to form from there. So we all go through this process. We all start from a place of not knowing in the beginning. We all came from that. And so there's effort and struggle and there's practice, and you nearly always make mistakes because you don't know and you're going to make mistakes. So you move into action, and eventually the idea is you get to a place of completion, which is the final stage where you've completed your task or the process you're working on is finished, and you've transformed your space of not knowing anything into developing a new skill or taking action or learning something or producing something, right?
Yeah.
So this process of not knowing, action, completion, is something he speaks to. Now, I watched another video as well where a guy mentioned the whole point of this is to get past that point of not knowing and into the place of knowing. And I tend to disagree a little bit myself, because I think that's an ongoing process. You're never going to know it all, ever. So although you might learn things along the way, I think that space of not knowing's kind of where you're just going to stay, in a sense.
Yeah.
Like you'll learn things, but you're never going to know everything. So learning to accept and be comfortable with not knowing is and it's interesting, if we go through these points will come, some of these points seem to overlap a little bit. So we'll come around to this again.
Absolutely. Just elaborating more on this not knowing. The way I kind of see that is, and I've brought this up before, the whole thing about you know what you don't know, or you don't know what you don't know. So like not knowing, because there's so many things that you discover and it's like, I had no idea you could actually do that. So when I try and do things, once I've gotten to a place of knowing what I don't know, then that's actually an achievement. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and that is a whole other thing where you just need to try things out, chuck things out, see what sticks. Because once you understand and have action, but even if you have action, I know I've been kind of struggling lately with trying to get my longer form content out. So for people who don't know, I try and do a weekly live stream, and now I'm in the process of trying to repurpose. That's what all the cool kids do for content, repurposing content. But I want to do it as easily as possible. I don't want to spend 3 hours for each 30-second short TikTok video. So I've been trying to cut up longer form videos into shorter form videos. And then like today, I posted up the first one. And again, it was like, because I didn't know, well, I knew what I was going to do, but I felt like the action part was hard because I wasn't aware of all the steps involved until I actually just started. And then I realized that, for me to have a thumbnail appear on Twitter, I need to add the thumbnail in the first few frames of the video. So straight away, while I was trying to do it all quickly, I was like, oh crap, need to open up Premiere Pro, re-render the video. And it was like this whole process. But now I've gone through like not knowing, action, and then completion. But the most important thing is you learn all that just by doing and getting it done. Hence the name.
Yeah, and you find out that you do know enough to get it done. And you learn on the way. And even now you don't necessarily know it all, but you still got it done. I think there's a fascinating idea of not knowing. That's kind of what I was alluding to when you go through the whole process and you still don't know. Like there's still things you don't know, right? You get to the end. Reminds me of working sometimes on, for example, working in a scrum, doing a sprint planning or a ticket grooming more so. When you sit there and go, I know I've often gone, hey, you can't do that course of blah, 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 blah. And someone else has come in, but this, and I didn't know that. Right. And it's kind of, and especially in a team scenario, it's okay to not know because someone else might. And even there's cases where I know there's plenty of times when I've, especially early in the days doing junior web development, when you'll implement a solution. By the time you finish the solution, someone goes, there's a module for that. And you're like, oh, I didn't know. Right. And so it almost doesn't matter that you don't know, you got it done anyway.
Yeah.
right? And that's this. It so harks back to our episode we did a couple of episodes ago about imposter syndrome. That you know, if you feel like you don't know, don't worry about it so much. Like everybody, no one knows everything.
That's it.
And you learn, and you. I like your phrase. I've come up with it before about the. I think it breaks down into 4, doesn't it? There's you know what you know, and you know what you don't know, but there's things you don't know that you don't know.
Yeah.
Is it 3? I can't remember. Yeah, there's things that you don't know, right? You
Yeah.
don't even know
And
you
those
don't know
ones are the
them.
hard ones because you don't know them, so you don't know.
Yeah. So just get on with it. And speaking of getting on with it, maybe we should move on to point 2, or we'll never get this finished. So, keeping in mind that a lot of this is really in the vein of fighting perfectionism. Is a big point to this whole thing. And so then point 2 is accept that everything is a draft. Of course, it helps to get it done. Yes. And I love this idea. Accepting your work as a draft is crucial for progress. That mindset helps you in getting things done because it removes the pressure of achieving perfectionism. And this is something I've seen and very much not liked in our web development career, that prototypes often make it to production. I know that's a pet hate I've had with managers and stuff. Go, don't worry about it, Bevan. It's just a prototype. And I'm like, yeah, but
it's going to end up
prototype. Then you go
in
launch
production.
it. Yeah, but see, having said that, when I've worked with people who are entrepreneurial type people and they just get it done, don't worry about getting perfect. It's just a prototype. Just go, and then they launch it, and it bugs me. But hey, like, kind of, they got it done, right? In a sense, there's something to be a little bit kind of on that one. I'm a little on the fence. I see the value in the in it.
I think software is one thing. Writing a blog post is another. Let me tell you, I worked for, I'm not going to say which company, but when I came in for the interview, this was a couple of years ago, they pretty much told me that they brought in some agency to do a proof of concept, or a POC, as they like to call it. And it was a 6-week proof of concept. And they decided to then go live with this proof of concept. And straight away, they were like, yeah, we shouldn't have done that, but we can't go back now. And it worked. I wouldn't be surprised if the site is still alive. But I did spend a couple of weeks just fixing up a lot of things. So when it comes to software, maybe not. The thing is, though, I think, and I've seen this, and I've seen this great illustration about Agile and like using actual illustrations where you first have a skateboard, then you have a bike, and the whole thing of iteration is like you first start off with a skateboard, a bike, a motorbike, a car. But it's, where you still have something, but then you iterate on top of that. But with software, we tend to think a bit differently, where we kind of half build something, bolt it on, and it's hanging and it's things dangling, and it's like, it's all right, don't worry about it. Yeah, so I don't know about software, but I do believe in like creative stuff where it's like, yes, write it, get it out. I know I struggle with that. If I have a 2,000 word tutorial that I need to write, it's like it needs to be perfect. Everything needs to be perfect. If I have a video, I will sometimes spend 5 hours editing it to get every single and out. And I've realized that I just don't have the time for it now.
Yeah.
And I know personally, especially coming back to these longer form live streams, which I'm trying to cut down into shorter videos, I've been listening to it, and I'm like, oh, there's a big pause there, but because it's all recorded live, and straight away I was like, oh, let me fix this up. I'm like, no. If I start editing these videos, then I'm gonna waste 10 hours editing it.
There's absolutely positives to this for sure.
And so it's like, no, get it out. Everything's a draft. And I do like that, thinking about that. You know what? Everything's a draft. Just get it out.
Yeah. I see definitely on that, because I brought it up in the other cast, working on that Drupal beginners course that I'm working on. It's definitely applied to that. I know I just had to get in and start doing it. I didn't, setting up cameras and stuff, I didn't know how to do it. One of my first videos was installing Drupal on Panthy, and I've recorded that video. The background's horrible. But all the information's there, and I got it up and I got it moved and said, okay, that one's done, right? It's done. Move on to the next one. And now I'm finished. my intention was to go back and re-edit that because I improved so much. Now that I'm finished, I'm just going to leave it. All the information's there. It's not my proudest work, but it serves its purpose and it's done. And it's funny that, like, if I'd spent time working on getting that perfected in the beginning, I don't think I'd be finished yet. So there is something to be said for accepting things as a draft. And in those, I know the video I watched, he made some really good examples of, like, say you're performing live, right? You're performing music live and you make a mistake. Well, you just keep going, right? It's a draft, right? It's kind of like that. There are a lot of places. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I kind of, this is especially working in teams sometimes and working with QA people and stuff. I'm a little bit, I think I tend to work this way sometimes, right? I've got it, here it is, put it up, and it goes through testing, and you just get grilled because, oh, this is not right, and this is not right. And it's like, don't put it as character flaw. I didn't spot that, right? I remember when we're very early primary school, right, where you do some writing and they go, now you got to edit it, pass it to the person next to you and get them to edit it. Right. And then, but the reasoning was that you can't see your own mistakes. Like, someone takes one look at it and goes bang, 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 and you go, wow, I didn't even see that.
Yep.
And I love that in Scrum and Agile. Just, sort of, I know I've been held to task before because why didn't you get it right? Just edit your own work. Why didn't you just edit it?
No, you can't.
I did.
That's BS. You can't edit your own work. That's why. That's why you need testers. Man, I have worked for agencies. Okay. That took the Agile and Scrum very seriously, where they had acceptance criteria. And what I've learned, and I thought I was always just helping out the QA or the testers, but I would actually put in a comment saying, look, this is how you test it out to verify it. And I was told straight away, no, don't put that in, because they need to verify it using the acceptance criteria. If they can't verify it using the acceptance criteria, then it fails. But then you're dealing with QA people that may not understand Drupal, may not understand, because these acceptance criteria can be, as a user, I created an article. And I've worked with a lot of QA people that aren't Drupal people. Do they know how to create an article? No, they don't. So I actually tell them, go here, click here, click here. If this works, this works. Then I did kind of understand from their point of view that, okay, yes, it is kind of that. But again, I'm just trying to move things forward. If I can help people, that's it.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. It reminds me of very early days in my web career where we weren't even building a website. We were building a presentation using Shockwave Director. Like, this is pre-Flash, right?
Macromedia, eh?
Macromedia, Shockwave. And so basically we had a screen that came up with a play button, and you press the play button and a video started playing. And so it was burnt on a CD, so someone could take it, put the CD in a computer, run a presentation. It's like year 2000, something like that at this stage. CD. And we built this whole thing. We put it on the CD. We posted it off to the client. And then they're like, it doesn't work. Right, fine. Send the CD back because it works for us. And we put the CD in, we open it, the play button's there. You click the play button, the video plays. Like, we put it in a Mac, we put it in someone else's computer, it just works. We're like, we don't know. And eventually our director, who wasn't a very technical person, he says, I tested and it didn't work. And you're like, show us. And we put it in his computer and you're like, it works. So we stood behind him, we watched him, and he was double clicking the button. And so what was happening was the first click was making it play, and then the second click was getting passed through to the video and making it pause.
See?
Right?
See?
It was a really interesting iterative process of, like, we just couldn't, because of course, being the people that did the work and knew how it worked, we all knew that button takes one click. And we never even thought about what happens if you double click the button. And that's what all the non-technical people were double clicking. Was fun.
Exactly.
So little divergence on your story there. So we had to accept everything as a draft course. It helps to get it done, right? I think that's a valuable one. Just get it done. Like, get it, if it's, and we've almost spoke to this next bit already a little bit. I told you they overlap. This is number 3, is there's no editing stage. It feels like almost the same point, right? Everything's a draft, there's no editing stage.
Does he
So
elaborate
John,
in the
be good.
video about this? Because I'm not sure I quite understand that there is no editing
Okay.
stage.
I'll go through my notes here. He says the notion that certain creative processes like painting and performing music, that's what I spoke to before, and pottery don't have an editing stage. You know, like you're performing music, you make a mistake, you can't go back and edit it,
Oh,
it's done.
okay. Yeah.
You make a piece of pottery, you put it in a kiln. When you get it out, if you don't like it, well, you smash it and you make another one, right? You can't
Yeah.
edit the piece of pottery. So it's either you get it, and I think it's a nice way of he says that reflects the way the real world works, and
Yes.
he's probably coming from a software point of view. Is that there is no editing stage in the real world. If you make a mistake and launch it, well then you're done. And software, obviously, I was thinking about that because software does have the ability to apply patches, right? But still, it's as a way of thinking from the point of view of not being perfectionist. It's a good way to look at it in your head. Just go, I'm just going to get it done. If I make a mistake, I make a mistake. And the same thing, it can go through QA, it can go through, and if you make a mistake, well, then you find out about it, and at least it's done, right?
Yeah. That's it.
So there is a balance between, of course, not just doing a crap job, but what's the other points he said? It mirrors the reality of the world. Once something's released into the world, this is a good one. I like this. Once something's released into the world, whether it be a book or a programming language or something else, the creator loses significant degree of control over it. I think this is something I've thought about before. When you think of things like Harry Potter and the Lord of the Rings, for example, like they made the Lord of the Rings movie when Tolkien wasn't even alive anymore.
Mm.
Gene Roddenberry's completely lost control of Star Trek, right? It's kind of, I do like that principle that once you create something and release it into the world, it's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
It gets a life of its own, becomes its very own entity. And I think this touches on that. So that's, yeah, that's a good point. Imagine Gene Roddenberry trying to get every single Star Trek episode from start to finish all written all up in one. Like, it's kind of, at some point, you got to let it go
Exactly.
and pass it on to somebody else. There's a very big lesson about letting go of control in here. It says that the advice is to learn to accept this lack of control. It's written here in the, rather than tweaking and attempting to perfect what you've already created, the suggestion is just move on and create something else.
That's it.
Which I think, like Harry Potter, you write the first book, you write the first book, you release the book, that's it, it's released now.
Mm.
There's something wrong with it. Well, now you move on, and a lot of authors work that way when they write these sagas. They don't write the entire saga from start to finish. Like even Game of Thrones, you're still writing it when they're already making the TV series.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's oops, I accidentally killed all my characters. Now what do I do?
Absolutely.
So I mean, it does really reflect the real world. In the real world, you create things, and if you get it wrong, well, hey, you get it wrong.
Yeah. And that's why for me, like when I do my live streams, I just go. There's no editing. Just go live, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's no going back. And you just have to wing it. And when you get comments and all that, and you get bots randomly jumping in your chat, you get, a person called Bevan just jump in your chat and start asking questions. It's like, no, I'm joking. You have to deal with that. And I like that. There's no pause button. There's no stop button. Just keep going.
Yeah. It's not directly pointed out. I mean, it was just mentioned here. The advice is to learn to accept the lack of control.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to notice as we discuss it, that's why this is an excellent exercise for me to learn this better too, to go through it. There is a underlying thread through here that's not directly called out, that a lot of it's about letting go of control.
Yeah.
Which is the whole thing about not knowing. Hey, look, it's okay. You don't know. You're just making a draft. You're not going to edit it. Just get it done. I love that it all boils down to this idea of just get it done. Like that's without that modern, I find in the corporate world, there's a lot of get it done, get it done. And so, but it's not that push. It's nah. Just get it. Just let it get done.
Yeah.
Right. So number 4, pretending that you know what you're doing is almost the same as knowing what you're doing. So just accept that you know what you're doing, even if you don't, and do it. I think that's poetry. As a long point, I'll say it again because that was quite long. Is pretending you know what you're doing is almost the same as knowing what you're doing. So just accept that you know what you're doing, even if you don't, and do it.
Yeah.
Which,
So this is a kind of a way of saying, you know, well, with like imposter syndrome, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. There's no, you're just fighting yourself. And I do understand, like we've talked about imposter syndrome before, but no one's going to stop you. Just do it. That's it.
Yeah. Look,
Fake it till you make it.
yeah, well, that's one of the quotes he puts here: "The fake it till you make it."
Yeah.
Yes. There is something you said that acting as if you know what you're doing can be almost as effective. Now, I don't necessarily like the fake it till you make it, but the accepting something I've said in workspaces before and kind of been treated like I'm being facetious and just being silly, but I
Yeah.
actually mean it, is a phrase of mine: "Knowing what you're doing is overrated." And I just felt so gratified when I found this Cult of Done and read through it, and it said that. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm saying when I say knowing what you're doing is overrated. Because especially when it comes to problem solving and things like that, the amount of times I've worked with a customer or something and they've rung up, or you've got a support ticket comes in and they go, how do I do blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I don't know. So I'll take the ticket, and then you set up Drupal and you open Drupal and you dig around and you figure it out and you go, well, okay, that's how you do it. And then you come back and you go, that's how you do it. And they go, how'd you know that? And you go, I didn't. I worked it out. And so it's almost like I know how, and I said this in the Slack channel on Drupal the other day. My skill is in figuring out how to do it, not in knowing how to do it. And I don't know if everybody works the same way. You know, we know in that Slack channel, I saw it, somebody came and asked how to do something the other day, and I wanted to be helpful and go to put an answer in. And then I saw the other person typing, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to hold back and see what they say. Interestingly, they then stopped typing and then they disappeared for about 10, 15 minutes and then came back and gave the answer. And I suspect they'd gone through the exact same process. I don't know for sure. I'm imagining that they've gone and figured out how to do it and then come back and then this is how you do it. And there's, especially in the web development, so often, I mean, I've found it's one of the reasons I get nervous in an interview. What if they ask me how to do something? I don't know. Like, kind of the answer is Google.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Just
yeah.
say, look, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah,
Just ask
I can figure it out.
ChatGPT. That's it.
These days it is, for sure.
You know, it's like, I can write you the best prompt to figure that out. Don't you worry.
I remember this way back in we're going like before 2000s, late 90s. I was at TAFE and doing an exam for the certificate for in IT and whatever, and we got given this written exam, and one of them was under which submenu of which main menu item do you find the settings for doing your print layout thing? And I'm just like, the answer is, that's an intuitive interface, right? Of course, I'd learned, that's something I'd learned it's an intuitive interface. It's designed for you to be able to navigate and find what you're looking for. Why is this question asking me exactly under which submenu in the tree is this particular item? It's like, I'd never bothered remembering that because I know that the menu is designed to be easy for me to navigate. Like, it's user experience, right? It's either going to be under file or edit, and then you look for something called print, and then you look for something for settings. Now, it's probably not exactly, I'd say now it's under file, print, settings, but I bet you it's not. But I don't know that, but I can still use a word processor and edit my print settings, and I still don't know the answer to where are the settings for print. So I know how to find them.
Yeah.
So there's really something valuable in this idea that we know what we're doing. It's a trick of language, I think. Like, knowing the answer to everything isn't the same as knowing what you're doing. Like, having the skill to be able to navigate your way through the landscape you're in is you mean, like, that's the same thing. You travel from Sydney to Brisbane in your car. How do you get there? And you go, well, up on the Pacific Highway, and then at some point I get my GPS out, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how are we going for time? Of course, we're
we're halfway through.
In.
Yeah, I think we've been recording for 29 minutes. So yeah.
All right, we want to crank these out. Of course, number 5 hits it on the nail. Banish procrastination. If you wait more than a week to, you've noticed this one. Banish procrastination. If you wait more than a week to get an idea done, abandon it. Now I'm a little bit unsure about what they're actually getting at, even after reviewing somebody else going through this. It's act on your ideas quickly. If an idea cannot be realized within a week, it's suggested to move on. Now that seems to be implying if you start something and you're not finished in a week, then stop. But I don't think that can't be all right, because my course I've been working on for 4 months. Lots of things take more than a week.
Exactly.
I think it's more if you've got an idea, if you haven't started, I think that's what it's really getting at.
Yeah.
If you've got an idea to do something and a week later you've procrastinated so much that you haven't even started, well, just drop it. Right? I think there's a natural thing about if you really cared and it's really important, you would have done it. So
exactly. Or break down your larger tasks into something that's bite size. Like, instead of thinking I need to spend the next 3 months working on this, break it down into days or weeks. And I know with myself, I kind of lose inertia, that inertia when you kind of get things going. And if you take a few days off from recording and editing those videos for the courses, then things kind of slow down. And then if you wait a month and you get back to it, it takes a while to kind of get things going again. That's the thing that I kind of struggle with when it comes to procrastination, where you kind of lose that inertia. And that's why I really like these all of these like short form content that I've been doing lately, because it's so much quicker. And he just gives me that, it is social media, and you do then fixate on like, oh, how many likes is it getting? How many reposts is it getting? And I can really see why people get into it. It's kind of like a slot machine. Cha-ching. Okay, all right, get it. Getting the dopamine hit, and I can really see that. But I kind of convinced myself to say, I am offering value to people. I am promoting Drupal. I'm not just, on TikTok dancing or anything. So yet, if I can increase engagement by like doing a little dance while explaining how to use Gutenberg and Drupal at the same time, I'll be more than happy to do that. I think it just comes down to that. Like, if you plan to do something for a month, maybe break it down into something a little shorter, because you will procrastinate. Because just thinking, oh, I've got a month to do this, like, oh no, that's too much.
Well, that's one of the things I love about this whole thing that we're going through with this Done Manifesto is the focus on just getting things done. It's like, forget the whole big picture, just get something done, right? It's better to do a little bit on something every day than try and get the whole thing done in a single day. Like, as long as you get something, and I love that value, as long as you get something done, even if you sit down and you look at it for 10 minutes and you scratch your head and you go, I don't know, I need to go and think about it. Well, then at least you've put some energy on it. And then the next day you can come back with that having been done. You've done your session of brainstorming, right? Even this straight topic that we're discussing now, and this is a little bit self-referential, is that I came across this. I sat down and made some notes. I wrote out a video script about it, thought, I might get around to making a YouTube video about this thing. Yeah, but I'm building the course, and that was coming first. So I'll put my energy into making the course. I mean, I got sick the other week, so I got delayed for a few weeks. And then it was just sitting there and not getting done. And then so I took my energy off it. I said, look, it's just, I've made the notes. I've put them into a Word document. That's done. Then we're doing this podcast and we go, well, coming up with topics. Suddenly it's like, how about we do that Cult of Done? And now we're discussing it. It's almost that, don't worry about it. I got it done. I've gone through these tiny little steps of, and all this applies. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what the video was going to look like. I didn't know the whole finished product. I had the idea that I wanted to speak to this Done Manifesto. I made some notes, put it out of my mind, went and worked on something else, and then blah, 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 blah. Here we are, right this moment, bringing that into fruition. It's really interesting that, reminds me of the Agile Manifesto with the responding to change rather than following a plan concept. It's, if I tried to stick to my plan going, no, I was going to make my own video, I've got a script like that, well, then we wouldn't be here now, and I'd probably never get it done.
Yeah.
So it's a lesson in just right here. It reminds me of Anthony Robbins talks about chunking too, and you just mentioned that. Break it down into little steps and just do the little bits.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's important to always think, like, I know I know me, like a few days this week, I was really struggling on just focus because I had too many things that needed to be done. And it's like, okay, just do one thing. Just do one thing. Spend 15 minutes doing it. Because then that 15 minutes will give you clarity to do then the next 15 minutes and the next 15
Yeah.
minutes. And of course, sometimes you need to cut back on the coffee if you're drinking too much coffee, like I end up doing because it makes me anxious. But then it's like, all right, take it easy, Ivan. Relax, breathe. Okay, what is the one thing you can do tonight? Especially like one thing I kind of struggle with is at night, I need to do something. Like I'm not going to just sit down and watch TV or watch Netflix or anything. It's like I need to do something. And I feel like if I don't sit down and do something productive, then I'm not productive. And it's like, okay, what can I do now for half an hour to push things forward? Because then it got me to a point where the next day I knew exactly what to work on.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important to just, you are going to have those days where you just don't know what to work on, but just spend that 5 minutes, just put a timer on or something, just get something
Yeah.
and focus. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, actually I can work on this. Oh, cool. And then before you know it, the inertia begins, things start moving. It's like, okay.
It does tend to. I know recently with building that course a few times, I've gone, you know what? I don't know exactly what I want to do today. I'm not clear on what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not feeling very motivated. Look, I'm just going to go turn my computer on, sit down, and I'll just write the first sentence of a script. And then next thing you know, it's 5 hours later and I've written the whole script and started making slides, like kind of there is just start, and there's been some days where I've sat down and spent 5-10 minutes and that's, and then gone out and procrastinated all day. It's and allowing for that, right? Because I mean, this is nice at the moment when I'm building my own project and I'm my boss, and I know in the workplace it can get a little bit harder when you've got somebody else, you're dealing with somebody else who wants it all done all now, and you're like, I find that a struggle when I feel like I'm getting pressured to work the way the world doesn't work. I'm trying not to be perfectionist, and you're trying to make me do it perfect. This is challenging, but there's something to be said for, I think in that case though, maybe you're just in the wrong environment. I've learned that. It's something about there's the code and character. There's some character about knowing who you are and what you do. And if you want to work that way, then you might be in an environment that doesn't support that now, but be open to potentially changing that environment if you need to. There's going to be one where it's suitable and you find people that you work with. So there's a bit of a lesson on set your vision, set your goals, and go after it, and things will move you in that direction. You might not be in the perfect place now, but you can get there. So where have we gone? We've done banish procrastination. Point 6, the point of being done is not to finish, but to get other things done. Right? So it implies that finishing one task is not merely an end goal, but a means to embarking on new projects.
I think we've kind of touched on that already.
Yeah. These three really blend in together. I noticed when I went through making notes on how to get started, he does read these points, point 1, 2, point 3, and he goes point 5, and then he talks for ages, and he goes, okay, point 8. And he blended 6, 7, and 5 all into one thing. 7 being once you're done, you can throw it away.
Yeah.
And it's it's just different ways of looking at this perfectionist thing, right?
Yeah.
Just get it done. Doesn't matter what you get done, get something done. If you sit down and I brought it up before the other week about the old Mr. Squiggle when we were kids. And Mr. Squiggle used to draw pictures out of squiggles, but he didn't start with a blank page. And I've seen artists work that. I met a guy once who used to do that. He'd go give me a piece of paper and he goes, draw a squiggle. And he'd draw these amazing, amazing artworks out of it. But you started by giving him a blank a page with a squiggle on it. All right. And he went from there. And I think there's really something in the creative process about that. It's like, just start. Do you know what to do? Sit down. And I've done it with doing things like coming up with content for, say, a presentation I'm doing at a conference or something. You just sit down and you get out a whiteboard and you do it like a mind map. You just write, what's the main topic? And you write it down. And then you go, what's this? And next thing you know, you suddenly got momentum going. Having started from, I got no idea how this is going to form. And you just start. And that's the same thing. Even if you're in a process like that, sit down, get your whiteboard, draw a mind map on it. You can break it right down into those chunks, like just write the theme of it on a piece of paper. Okay, that's done. Now draw some points around it. Okay, that's done. Righto. Now expand on those points. Now that's done. Right. And you got this progressive done, expands until suddenly you're complete. That's a nuancy, what I'm picking up, a nuancy difference between done and complete. Laugh at perfection. I'm moving on to point 8, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
Laughing at perfection. A laugh at perfection because it's boring and it keeps you from being done.
That's pretty much,
perfection is an impediment to being done. Perfection is an unrealistic goal. It hinders your progress. This idea encourages you to accept imperfections. We've both spoken to that. I mentioned about my course with the how to install Drupal thing. It's imperfect. Okay, fine, right? There's a real level of vulnerability in that, however. And I've had a few people give me the same feedback when I've mentioned that I've got this course, and when I'm building it, and when I first started, my cameras, my talking to the camera skills weren't that great. My lighting's terrible, and as I've gone through, it's got really good, and you can really see the contrast. And I've had a few different people go, leave it in there. Let the people watching it see how you developed. It's inspiring. And it's like, I don't but even this podcast, right? You and I just both started that, and we just started.
Absolutely.
This is a testament to, I didn't know what we were doing. We were going to hey, Ivan, I remember just sending you a note that goes, let's start a podcast. What about stuff?
And you put a whole list of stuff together in a Google Docs, and then we were like, all right, let's get together next week and just record the first episode and see how we go. All right, fine.
Yeah, and now we've got momentum.
Exactly.
And none of our podcasts have been perfect. We've had good feedback. I haven't had any negative feedback yet. Come on.
Well, we're not trying hard enough. We need negative feedback. You know what they say? If you're not getting negative feedback, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. With my rants and some things I've got to say, I'm terrible. Yeah, I'm sure somebody's going to go, Bevan.
Just wait. Once it starts, it's all going to be flying in. All the negativity.
Bevan, you can't say that. No, what do you? What do we got? This one, number 9. People without dirty hands are wrong. That's a harsh statement.
Yeah.
Doing something makes you right. You know what? When I was younger, I might have not liked this at all. Because as you develop, I've often wanted to, just say what I know and go be right about stuff. But I kind of having insecurities. Like the person getting it done's the one getting it done. I said this same phrase, I think, in an episode to you recently about that proverb I heard about never tell someone they can't do something when they're in the middle of doing it.
Yeah.
Right. Which reminds me of the same thing. Got a note here that this principle champions the value of direct engagement and hands-on experience. But we've spoken to this already too. I told you they overlap.
Yeah.
So we spoke to this in the sense of, that whole not knowing what you're doing. Like, it's funny how this whole people with dirty hands are wrong, doing something makes you right, ties in so much to it's okay to not know what you're doing. Because just doing it is what, just get in and do it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So one of the things I have appreciated with doing Agile and Scrum, though, is how you can, that whole process applies this to a very team-oriented thing sometimes, because you come through and it does kind of work that you've got a pretty much big vision for a project. Like someone's come in and they go, generally, we want this, speaking to the last project to work on, it's a Drupal interface that speaks to an API, because we want to give our customers an easier way to access the data that's in these APIs. Very vague, big idea. And then you break it down into all your little user stories. And okay, well, we need to be able to log in, and you need a page where it lists these. And it's even Agile works that way, that you got no idea what you're doing until you're doing these 2-week sprints. And as it progresses, nobody knows exactly what the whole project's going to look like from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how much this parallels Agile in that sort of way as well. There's something about having a structure but not a plan. It's we get in a whole conversation about how I know a lot of people see agile as that means we can do whatever we want, and it's like, well, no. Within a certain framework, yeah, you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
um,
Exactly.
so what have we got the notes here? It contrasts individuals who engage with their work in a tangible way, getting their hands dirty, with those who critique and theorize without engaging in the actual process. That just seems like a nice little social criticism on people who like to tell other people how to do things.
Yep.
I've seen a million memes about that. I don't know. That's just a common gripe in every industry.
Yeah.
What's that meme I've seen where you got someone standing there and says, I don't know how to do your job, but my clipboard says you're doing it wrong?
I haven't heard that one. That is good.
Yeah. So it encourages taking action, getting involved, and learning through the process of doing.
Yeah,
So,
you just need to get your hands dirty. That's it. Just get in there and get
yeah.
it done.
I mean, I've solved all sorts of problems. That's been very rare. I can only think of one, maybe two, there possibly two, but I can only clearly remember one time where I've had a problem that I couldn't solve in the web development job. It was just a matter of time, sometimes maybe someone can solve it quicker, but and I think that's part of in the web development. That's part of the job, is just believing that you'll be able to figure it. I mean, that's how I learned how to. I started out not knowing what I was doing. I didn't go to uni. I didn't that TAFE course I spoke about. I didn't finish.
Yeah.
I just went and got a job, and they go, "Here, you do this," and I go, "Do you know how to do that?" No, but I'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
very rare have I not. I've had to deal with, a few times coming in over time, but never really has there been a problem that it's just completely can't figure that out.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
do have to learn to push back and go, I've never told anybody, no, it's impossible. And as you start to learn those little catchphrases, you go, of course we can do it. It's just a matter of time and money. So how much time and how much money have you got? Right.
Yep.
So we're getting close here. This one's a good one. Failure counts as done, so do mistakes. That's the two ways of wording that when I read it. Failure counts as done, so do mistakes. Or failure counts as done, so you could do that. So make mistakes. I think there's making mistakes is part of the process.
Well, yeah, testing something out. This comes back to the whole what is it? Lean startup thing where you just try things, see if it works, see if it doesn't work. And it's you're the one who decides if it's a failure. You're the one who decides. And bringing this back to like a personal thing, as I mentioned, doing short form content, one thing I kind of struggle with is, should the videos that I upload be short or long, or should they be 16:9 widescreen, or should they be 9:16 vertical for mobile? It's all these little things that you think, wait a minute, why is it taking me so long to get this content out there? It's because I'm just thinking of these stupid things and I'm worried about it. And it's like, do PDF slideshows convert better on LinkedIn? And well, technically they do. Apparently, that's what the data says. But it's like, I'm not going to spend now double the effort to create slideshows of my videos that I like creating. So it's kind of like one of these things, just to have to test things out. And that's what I'm trying to do a lot more this year myself, because I've realized that, just writing tutorials doesn't count these days. Because you can work your ass off. Well, pardon the language. You can work your bottom off, writing tutorials, and then Google pushes out some type of update, and you lose 50% of your traffic. Just like that. So, it's one of these things that you have to try things out. And failure. It's just experimenting. Maybe change the framing, the term, or something to something else. I'm experimenting with different things and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't.
I've learned that in when you say experimenting, I've learned not to use the word play in a business setting. They go, "What are you doing?" I'm just playing with this thing. You're not here to play, you're here to work. So I'm experimenting with this thing. I think you should be allowed to. Plays an invaluable part of play and experimenting are often the same thing. That's
Oh
why
yeah.
play exists, right? I think I want to advocate for that in the corporate world. Let people play. That's how it works, right? It's kind of,
Mm-hmm.
but see, that's where this undercurrent of control is in here so much. I find that, it's something that agile is somewhat designed to overcome. This whole Cult of Done is designed to overcome, and I think it's valuable for all of us to recognize that control is a really, really friction-causing concept. Like that's agile is very much about letting go of control. It's like
Yeah.
you don't need to plan, you don't need to know exactly where you are. We got a vague idea, hand it over to the team, and that's even in proper Scrum. You don't have the stakeholders in most of the meetings. They're not even there, right? Because they've handed over control to the team and gone, we trust you. And then this little iterative, we'll come back and we'll give you. It's control is. And this is what did I talk about in the 80s? I talk about in agile so much. In the 80s, it was the command and control style of management,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just so inherently control just locks people in, right? It's that's funny in web development. I remember really early years and years ago when I was way younger, one of the managers going, "You're not allowed to listen to music anymore." I was like, "Why not?" Like they got music on, and they go, "Oh yeah, the designers are allowed to listen to music because they're creative types, but you're a programmer, so you need to focus, so don't listen to music." And it's like, yeah, we are. Like that's. I mean,
Yeah.
that started me on a whole thought process of. I'd argue we're even more creative. Like you're sitting there drawing a picture and you're drawing what it's going to look like. I've got to take what you're looking like, what your end result is, and then open up a big text file and write a bunch of text and have that end up producing the thing you drew.
Mm.
Right? That's a very creative process. Like I don't know what they were thinking when they were trying to. Like I really think that's been on my mind for a long, long time. That the web, I'm a web developer, not a software developer, but that our role is a very, very creative role.
Oh, absolutely.
I mentioned it. That means sometimes you wear different hats. Sometimes there's a problem with production and it's gone down, or there's a security hole and you got to get in there and you got to patch it. It's almost like it's surgery, right? Everybody leave me alone. I got to get in and focus. I got to get this done. Just no distractions. Bam. And other times you're brainstorming and planning, what are we going to do next week? And other times you talking about what colors. Sometimes you're copywriting, right? We wear a lot of different hats.
Oh yeah.
And in web development, there's a lot of I was speaking to someone the other day about this whole talking about distractions, right? And how do we deal with distractions? And I go, it depends on the person, their personality type, their environment and the task they're working on, right? Because sometimes distractions are bad, other times they're necessary,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a matter of getting that done. So what are we talking about? Failure counts as so do mistakes. Have we got onto distractions and stuff? We've got to get on to destruction is a variant of done. Now, this is a really interesting one. I'll read the notes to get into this one. This principle acknowledges that sometimes the completion of a project or a task may involve its destruction. Whether the end comes through intentional dismantling or as an unintended outcome, it signifies a form of completion. It's still, if something's but going back to that analogy that he'd had about the pottery, right? I mean, if you put it in a kiln, and I'm moving on from his analogy a bit, but if you make a piece of pottery and you put it in the kiln and it's too hot and it cracks, well, you're done. Like that's.
Well, yeah.
You're done, right? So
maybe next time you'll do the pottery a bit differently. But this comes down to there is a book by Seth Godin called The Dip. And I just Googled it because I did read it ages ago. And he says here, the little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick. So essentially it's a very similar thing. The book's only like it says here on Amazon, 96 pages.
Is that the concept that like things get harder before they get easier kind of thing? Like when you learn a new skill, you're going to get worse at it first until you
maybe it's been like,
and then you'll get better.
Yeah. I read it like 15 years ago. It's like 2007, like a while ago. And but the concept is that maybe sometimes it is best to just quit. And this is something that I've often thought about as well. It's like, have I been writing about Drupal too much?
You're
Have
right.
I been focusing on just one CMS for too long? Like, should I have, I was playing around with in 2013, I was playing around with what is it, Meteor, which was a front-end framework that used MongoDB as a back-end. And you could do these amazing things where you modify things through the console because MongoDB was unprotected. And then it'll do similar to like React stuff, like change things through the DOM. And then I used to play around a lot with like Backbone JS. And I was thinking to myself, man, if I just started talking about this stuff in 2013, I'd probably be able to have I'd be a content creator working full time on it. And that's something that just because then I would have got into the whole JS thing and seen how that's all gone. So that's something that I kind of struggle with. It's like, have I stuck too much to Drupal?
Well, interesting. When did I mention that to somebody? Did I open this today? I'm very much a Drupal person, a PHP person. I've done PHP and Drupal because that's what's been there.
Yeah.
I think I was speaking to you this morning about exactly that. I know Drupal and I know PHP and I know them very well, and I've followed that route. But then there's so much else to talk about that I understand the principles of. But I know there's a lot of tasks I've worked on that I felt very deflated after I've worked on them and been very proud of them, and then they've just gone, no, we don't need that anymore. Like that happens. Even the last project I work on, there was a whole section of stuff, and then when I got it like 95% complete, some committee somewhere had a big thing, oh, we're not doing that anymore, and you're like, oh god, that was the best thing. It's the best thing we've worked on, and now it's just done. And when it's not a big deal, so I got paid for it, so whatever. But is it an accounting concept called sunken costs? I've seen this happen a lot. I've seen a lot of people chase. It probably happens when you hear about gamblers doing it, like chasing that. I lost $100, so I'm going to spend another $100 to try and win the $100 back. And it's like that whole idea of we've already invested money into this project, so we're going to keep investing money to make the project successful, even though it's probably not a good idea to do it anymore. It's like chasing that.
Absolutely.
Fallacy. You've already lost the money. It's gone. It's irrelevant to your next decision.
Absolutely. And I know myself, I have thought about that a lot, where I'm like, well, if I quit now, I don't know what else I'm going to be talking about or writing about. And I've put in all this time and just to give up on it. And there's been stages about 4 or 5 times in the last like 10 years, because I've been writing, online about Drupal for a while now, where I'm thinking I could have given up, and I don't, because I put in all this time. And now I'm kind of coming up through, I don't know, through the darkness, because I finally gotten off my website, gotten off my island, because I always thought, I don't want to write content on other platforms. This sucks. But then I realized it's like, well, I can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. I need to change. I need to do something different. All right, let me try. You're
talking about posting on LinkedIn instead of your own website.
Exactly. Kind of, it's like, doing other type of content, doing other things. It's like, let me just try out different things. And, I was always under the impression that, yep, Drupal's slowly dying. That's it. It's done. I don't know what I'm going to work on. I'm just going to make as much money as I can right now, because government's using it. Let's live with it. I'm, going to be in my 40s soon. That's it. It's over. I'm done. I'm not going to be able to make any more money. But then when I started going on other platforms and just writing content differently, I've noticed that, there's still demand for it. And I do think that, Drupal is now poised, and it does have a unique market advantage. And that's another, I think we've probably talked about this on a previous episode, but that's kind of got me all excited about, there are a whole bunch of things I can talk about, but Drupal's only a real small part of it.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, like my job is to teach people how to solve a problem. And yes, 90% of the time it is Drupal, because that's what I use. But I
Well,
know, but yeah, coming back to this whole thing about the sunken cost fallacy, yeah, like I've probably thought about quitting probably 5 times, and every single time it's like, oh, but put in
I
all
put
this
so much.
effort,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
at the end of the day, it helps me get a job because I've been a contractor for a very long time. And it's like, well, at least it can help me get, a job, and I'm in people's, it's all about branding, personal brand. So
yeah.
yeah,
Well, there's the
I'm
whole
still
idea
going.
of being 3 feet short of gold story as well. Like what
Exactly.
you got. Are you
Exactly.
beating a dead horse, or are you 3 feet from finding the seam of gold that you've been mining for and just can't like that?
Well,
Because
that's it. I always feel like, okay, another story. So I used to post so with all of my courses, and I've mentioned this before where I've mentioned that I struggle with doing long form courses because it's for me it's a very hard thing to do, to keep the effort up, as you're fully aware.
I'm so
So
encouraged.
yeah, so what I did is I went through a phase where I had all these courses that were premium that didn't really sell well, and so I put them all online on my site for free. But I made it so that people had to sign up.
Mhm.
And then after about a year, I then I then calculated how much I would have made if I charged for all of these courses. And it was like, okay, well, that's decent money. All right. So it looks like people want content. Of course, somebody signing up for free and somebody paying for it is two separate things. But if nobody wants to even watch the free
Microtransactions.
content, but if nobody wants to watch the free content, you're not going to sell them on the paid content. So that kind of like got me thinking. It's like, again, I'm so close. I'm so close.
Yeah.
And I've got a few ideas now that I want to try and monetize. But again, it's one of these things that it's like, oh, is it going to go well? When you try and monetize thing in a Drupal community, people don't like it. I know from experience whenever monetization comes up of any form. But I do have a few ideas out. At this point, it's like, let me just test it out and see.
I mean, that's I've noticed that too. All these people working for companies that are Drupal agencies. Is being a Drupal agency not monetizing Drupal? Like, why?
Well, exactly. Yeah,
You
that's a
know,
whole. Well, hey, let's keep
we're
that
not
for
working for
another
free.
episode. Should
Yeah,
Drupal monetize? Because that's been brought up many times, and I have opinions. And yeah, you're right. It's like, wait a minute, you're paid to work on it, and you're pretty much um, going off at other people. Because there was a big push in like 22. I remember 2012, 2013, or maybe even earlier than that, about having an app store when app stores were popular, and Drupal having
yeah.
an app store. And yeah, so there was some heated discussions of like, when you get overly open sourcey people together and they talk about monetization, let's just say things can get very heated.
Yeah, it's sure. Oh, yeah. It's gonna
Yeah.
be interesting because I'm strongly open source advocate. But then when it comes to, I don't know, we live in a world where I got to eat, right? You know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
absolutely. Right.
let's
That's
move
another
on
episode,
because
man. That's
we've
another
got like
episode.
what 12 and 13 to go.
Yep. I
Um,
smashed
yeah,
through
but this
these.
one's fascinating. This one's, if you have an idea and publish it on the internet, that counts as a ghost of done. Now I don't know why they bother saying a ghost. I reckon you should just count that as done, right?
Yeah,
That's a task you've
absolutely.
done. This principle speaks to the value of sharing ideas, even if those are not fully realized or developed.
Oh,
Now
okay.
I feel
Yeah,
I've
I
had
kind of
pushback
understand that
on
now.
doing this. I feel like I've had pushback on this before, like kind of bring me solutions, not problems, or and the idea of stop talking about it, go and do it, kind of thing. And it's like, yeah, but I've got this whole big list of things to do that I already don't have enough time to do. And I've got this idea that I don't know if anybody else has even thought about or not. So, hey,
Mm.
does this inspire somebody? Like, why not put it out there? And I know I have felt that pushback sometimes of like, don't bring us problems and just complain. And well, I'm not complaining. I'm just pointing out that something could be improved. Like that's
Yep.
not the same as a complaint, right? And if someone is, and that's why I like the issue queue. This is a great example of, and I want to do a YouTube video on this exact story about. I told you today that issue I opened about the update notification the enabling updates on the installer thing, because I was like, I don't know how these work. I don't know exactly what they do. And I was finding myself going, I wish it just had like some descriptions or a link to the documentation so I could just so I didn't have to do the trial and error of install, uninstall, install it, see what the checkbox did to the config, turn it off. Then there's 2 checkboxes. So I had to go through it 4 times to see what the different combinations resulted in. And then I opened an issue, and one of the first feedback was very diplomatically well written, but it kind of opened in the way I understood it as, haven't had anybody feed this back before, and it's been like that for years, so I'm not sure how much of a problem it is. And it's like, well, if there's a fallacy in discourse, nobody's complained about it, doesn't mean it's not a problem. But then we did a bit of work on, we'd had a bit of back and forth and decided just to put a link to the documentation, and I went and wrote the documentation up. With the help of ChatGPT, by the way. ChatGPT, this is how it all works. Please write that in a way that makes sense. An updated document, and it ended up in front of the usability team, who then reviewed it and said, yeah, we like this solution, but we've got some other ideas and we want to add this. And there's also, we should put a note about which data gets sent back because it's a privacy thing. And I'm like, lucky I opened that issue, right? Because it's not a huge, big problem, but now it's moving forward, and I could have just accepted all that pushback and gone, okay, fine, it's not that, like, and it's even me, it seems like such an innocuous little, and there was no one's complained about it before, and I was from the point of view of, hey, look, a new user doesn't even know they don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, I've installed Drupal a million times, and when you just because I've never really set up a project of every project I've worked on pre-set up, but I've installed Drupal on my local a million times, and you just go updates, whatever. I never really, and it wasn't until I was building this course and I'm writing a session on updates and how they work, and it's like, so what does this checkbox do? I actually don't know. Right? I don't know exactly what it does. When I find myself having to write an article on how that box worked, I realized I didn't know the answer. And that's why when I got that pushback about, no one's ever complained before, so it's a really problem. I go, well, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like, I just it turns updates on. But what does that, what are the consequences? What config does it change? What effect does it have on my website? There's lots of questions around it. And it's interesting to go, but here's the idea of bringing it back to the Cult of Done. I just went and opened an issue. Done.
Yeah.
Right. And then someone's come with feedback. All right, feedback. Write a response. Done. And then they did a bit of work on it just to put a link on something. And then I went and wrote the documentation. There's little done after done after done. And then it ends up in front of the usability review. He says, come back and okay, do another bit. And it's just continually done until now we've got this big improvement. And it was interesting for them to come back and go, actually, there's nothing sitting there because it's the updates in Drupal. When it talks to, it sends to Drupal, it tells you about what modules you've got installed and what versions they are. So their usability has gone, we really should be documenting what information it sends to Drupal, because it just says it sends data to Drupal servers. It doesn't say what. And, even I hadn't thought of that. Kind of, it was, that's not what I opened up because I just thought I didn't know how this worked. And for them to point out that was, so it's a bit of encouragement for, I don't think there are any insignificant things. And this is just talking about it. I had an idea. I went and opened the issue. Then even if I didn't do it, the issue's there, it's done, right? It's kind of, and it sparked, it turned into something of value. And all I did was go and write up an issue. I've opened another issue similarly on the address module since. The same thing. It's like it's not obvious how this works. Open an issue that says it's not obvious how this works. I mean, obviously, I did put a lot more effort into writing a good issue, but there's value. There's value in that. I don't think there is any such thing as a too small an issue. At least let the community decide, right? So finally, 13, and then we're done.
Yes.
Done is the engine of more. See how they all feed back on each other?
Yep, that's it. And rinse and repeat.
So
and that's it.
Oh, look, I haven't got my notes for that one. See, mistakes are great. Done is the engine of more. And I think we've spoken to this already, though, haven't we? Really, I just kind of mentioned to it. I went and opened an issue, then I was done, and I put it aside, and then someone commented on it later. Boom! Now there's more. It just sparked a ripple effect that leads to more and more, progressively. Right? You can always bail out and go, no, I don't want to be in this anymore. I guess. But there's something about building that momentum. So here's I found my notes. This principle encapsulates the idea that completing tasks generates momentum, like I just said, for starting and completing further tasks. The act of finishing something fuels the desire and the capacity to tackle something new. There's definitely you ever heard that the steam train metaphor? I guess it's a metaphor about how it takes a hell of a lot of effort to get a steam train started, but once it's started, it takes a hell of a lot of effort to get it stopped.
Yeah.
So that's just start. Like it's just because that's the whole train. It starts out
Exactly.
right until eventually it gets going, and it's like, so just start. Like that's, and I find this in things like health and exercise and stuff. Like that they teach that. You got someone who's overweight and unfit sitting in front of the TV. It's like, well, don't just get up, go down to the gym and go and lift a million. Like you just get up and walk to the kitchen. Good, done. Right,
Exactly.
kind of. So I think there's something to be said for, and it's really good when I found this when I'm demotivated or something like that. Just this concept I brought up at the beginning, just do a little bit. My coach speaks to this too. He's in the middle of writing a book, and he said the same thing. He just every day he does something. Even if he sits down for 5 minutes and writes one sentence, like just every day do something, because it builds momentum. I personally find one of my challenges is trying to go too hard, and I burn myself out. I hold myself to a really high standard, but I have trouble saying it. I do hold myself to this extremely high standard, and it's like I just didn't realize I did. I just thought I was, it's inherently that same imposter, not thinking you're good enough, not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. So you hold yourself to this huge standard, and so there's something that's the opposite side of just do something. Like you don't need to do it all, and that's a lesson from both angles. If you're unmotivated and can't seem to get started, just do something. And if you're feeling overwhelmed and there's way too much to do, well, then just do something, right? It works in both directions.
Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the end of the little engine that could get done.
Yes.
Unless you want to speak to that a bit.
No, I mean, it comes down to just inertia, and I've brought that word up a few times. You just need to start moving. And I know I kind of struggle with a similar thing where, for me, I feel like I always need, how can I say it? Like it's something that I've kind of been struggling with a bit lately, because I've been working from home, and before I used to get a co-working space, and sometimes I feel like my world is literally just like where I live, and I'm just going around in circles. And sometimes you can kind of get like, you kind of like lose that motivation. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get things done. And I notice that sometimes I just have to understand that, yes, if I'm going to exercise or something, I'm not going to be at my 100%, and that's okay. It's better to do something at 50% than to do nothing at all, because they do say that if you want to do something daily and consistently, don't skip more than 2 days, because if you skip more than 2 days, there's a good chance you're not going to do it. And that comes down with a lot of things. It's actually better to do it at 50% capacity every single day than to do it once a week intensely. That's what I think. And that comes down to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Learning a language, learning learning an instrument, learning new technology. Just do something, because it's those little bits, it compounds. And you're going to learn a lot more than just all of a sudden getting that excitement. Oh yeah, let's cram in, or, go absolutely crazy for an hour, and then you're like, oh, this is exhausting. And then you move on to something else.
Yeah. I mean, I can do that. That's I can cram it last minute. I used to do it at school. So not study, and then cram the night before, and then pass the exam with flying colours the next day.
Yeah.
And that I know I can remember a couple of times where they've gone, wow, you must have studied for weeks and weeks. I literally only opened the textbook the first time last night. Like, that can be a trap, because I find that's a skill in itself. On one hand, it's like, hey, you spent like a whole month studying every day to achieve what I got done in an hour last night, right? But also I'm running the risk, and I was stressed the whole time, and then
Yeah,
and I had to
exactly.
cram really bloody hard and almost give myself a heart attack from the effort, and so there's a balance to be had from
Yep.
that. A little example, there was a course I did just a couple of months ago that was going to be happening every day over like just online course using Zoom, and it ran over like a 5-day period, and I'd been getting emails every few days saying, hey, make sure you prepare, and it wasn't until the night before like that I was running around making sure my speakers were set up, reading the emails, going, what do I need to do? And I got it all done. But that's a risky thing to do. Like living my life like that, there's a lot of times where I've ended up missing the boat on things. So it's like something to be, for me, that's a trap, right? Because it's a valuable skill, and sometimes it's worked for me and other times it wasn't. And I've learned to have that awareness, to pay attention to that pattern,
Yeah.
and be conscious of it, so I can go, what am I really? And that's why I like this idea. Just do a little bit. Like, it doesn't take much to open up the email and read it, because I've got that fear of commitment. Like, I kind of like to get everything done. I feel like I'm not good enough. I feel like I've got to prove myself and get it all done. So it's like, that email, if I open it up, I've got to do it. I find the same opening issues on Drupal.org. Like, there's a template you're supposed to fill. You're supposed to there's all these things you got to do. You got to put the right tags on it, do a search and make sure nobody else has reported it. And then when you're writing up the reproduction steps, it's all right. Well, now I've got to set up an environment and go through and and document all the steps. And I've got to do it on a fresh Drupal call just to make sure that the bug actually really does exist. And it's not that, it's all this sometimes. I particularly think in the Drupal community, sometimes just let people open issues that aren't perfect. Like, there's a lot of rules around issues, and people come back, you haven't put reproduction steps in there. And it's like, well, if I don't, like, I haven't got time. Like, kind of, there's a little bit, I don't want to waste people's time, but on the other hand, there's a lot of issues that might not get reported because the amount of work to report an issue is just, who's got time to do all that? It's kind of, I'm 99% sure it's a really issue. Do you want me to spend 4 hours proving that 5%? It's kind of, open the issue, and it's that you don't have to do it. You can look at the issue and go, there's no reproduction. It's like, let me put the issue, and I'll come back in a week when I've got time and put the reproduction steps on it. I really think it fits in line with this cult of done. Just, it doesn't need to be perfect. I'm advocating for allow imperfect issues.
There you go.
So we're done.
We are. Another episode in the can.
Hey, look, I made a mistake.
Oh, there you go.
So this whole episode is a self-referential testament to the fact that we pretty much followed that whole thing in a sense to get this done.
Yes.
So what are we going to do? Let's talk about the Cult of Done. Okay, cool. Let's write some notes. Done. Right.
Let's
have our preliminary meeting. Done. Let's start the thing. All right, now we're talking about it, and we're complete. Thanks for everybody for joining us. Go and check out. I'll try and, when I edit this, I'll try and put links to that the No Boilerplate channel for the How to Get Started, the Cult of Done. That's really good. There's a wonderful story in there about a lady called Martha Graham, which I wanted to talk to, but I didn't. So go and watch it. It's a really good video. That's what introduced me to it. He explains this really well, and I want to hear what people think. I got particular people in my mind who I know have been watching this channel who might have something to say. I'm interested in their take on how this fits with the Agile, the Agile Manifesto. I think we could probably go through that too.
Exciting.
Yeah, I think I like the Agile Manifesto.
Oh,
I think it's
there you go.
But we'll see you all next week.
Okay, cool. All right, see ya.